chair, yeah.
Holiness, it is a great honor for me to welcome you to the European Parliament. On behalf of the members of this High House, I'd like to welcome you here most warmly. We recognize and honor the spiritual authority of the Patriarch in the Orthodox Church and throughout the Christian Church. In addition, Your Holiness, because of your commitment for life and humanity and peace, justice and tolerance throughout the world, we recognize your very high moral authority. In a region which is torn apart by fratricide, Your Holiness, in your responsibility as someone to provide spiritual help, you have called for reconciliation. You're very open to the protection and conservation of the environment, and this is a subject which Your Holiness on the 1st of September of this year covered in a message, and this is something which is also in line with the efforts of this Parliament. There's the idea of developing a model which will do justice to human life and dignity. At a time when the building of Europe has reached a historical turning point, our Parliament will listen to your message with great interest. Your Holiness, you have the floor.
Εξοχότατε κύριε Πρόεδρε, εντιμότατη κυρίε και
Your Excellency, Mr. President, honourable members of the European Parliament, with much joy and deep satisfaction, we have come into your midst on these official premises of the European Parliament, which, in the minds of these people, vividly represents the centre of renewed historical efforts to achieve European unification. We wholeheartedly thank you for the invitation you have extended to us. We thank you, Your Excellency Egon Klepsch, President of the European Parliament, for taking the initiative to invite us. We thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, for being present here today. You have the great and historic mission to organize the unity of the peoples of Europe in peace, justice and democracy, which means in solidarity and in love. It is a mission which, in every likelihood, transcends our individual limitations, but which has the power of a joint effort for a better world. And we wholeheartedly pray that this mission will continue. The unification of Europe, to which you have devoted your efforts as representatives of the will of your peoples, is a task which is familiar to us. We minister to a tradition of 17 centuries of caring and struggling for the salvation and unity of European civilization. We, the elder patriarchate of the new Rome, Constantinople, together with the other European axis, Old Rome, have not been able to make this unity visible. We are most deeply grieved by this fact. We continue, however, to pursue in common our initial witness that political unity separated from civilization, that is, without the fundamental meaning of human relationships, cannot lead to the achievement of a united Europe. The unity pursued by the peoples of Europe can only be realized as unity in the sharing of a common meaning of life and as a common goal of our human relationships. It is surprising that the real and most deeply democratic organization of the Orthodox Christian Church, with its rather large degree of administrative autonomy and local independence for its bishops, patriarchates and autocephalous churches, all simultaneously enjoying the Eucharistic unity in faith, is one kind of model which the European Union, under the name of the principle of assistance, recently, or subsidiarity, recently legislated as the most advantageous method for defining its powers. In spite of the drastic world changes throughout the history of Europe, Old and New Rome continue to remain axes of reference and unity for European civilization. We are speaking here about the fundamental meaning of unity, not an ideological alienation of this understanding into religious or political doctrines, which often leads to the absolutizing of nationalistic and racial particularities. It is our belief that European unification will not be possible if such absolutes dominate. We are aware that at this very moment, many of you have put before us, and the Orthodox Catholic Church, which we serve in our senior ranking diocese, the tragic reality of a horrendous war of our times, in which Orthodox populations of Europe have become embroiled, where there is a fighting among neighboring Christians and people of other faiths. The Ecumenical Patriarchate and the Orthodox Church in general respect the ethnic traditions and sensitivities of peoples. We, however, most categorically condemn every kind of fanaticism, transgression, and the use of violence, regardless of where they come from. Our persistence in the need for free and peaceful communication among people, mutual respect and mutual and peaceful coexistence among nations remains unmoved, as we also underscored in the recent Bosphorus Declaration during the Conference on Peace and Tolerance, which was convened at our initiative. You are the prime contributors to European unification. It is your obligation as political leaders, especially since you are the ones exercising legal authority, to see to the protection of the weak and every kind of minority. We have seen recently with the events surrounding Gorazde the need for the civilized world to protect the rights of minorities. You, as I say, are the prime contributors to European unification. You have an obligation as political leaders, especially since you are the ones exercising legal authority, to see to the protection of the weak and every kind of minority, the safeguarding of freedom of thought and speech, as well as movement and residence of persons where their natural, spiritual and social needs require. In general, it is your obligation to create those kinds of conditions which will allow for the promotion of cooperation and unity among peoples and nations. In conjunction with this is your obligation to lessen, or even more, to remove inequality of development, which is evident between the wealthy, so-called developed world and that which is undeveloped, because such inequality endangers the future of humanity. United Europe must not only offer a plan of unified economic development, nor simply a program of collective defense. With things being as they are, the vision demands a unified social strategy of peaceful and constructive cooperation for the peoples of Europe. It is a question of civilization. It is a question of understanding interpersonal relationships, one of accepting one another's national traditions. The Ecumenical Patriarchate of near Rome, Constantinople, which we humbly represent today before you, does not pretend to bring to this center of European unity political strength, economic power, or ideological claims. Because this is not our mission. Permit us to note, however, that experience gleaned over the centuries paradoxically confirms that power, which continues to stimulate history, is made perfect in weakness. Corinthians 12:9. We submit to you the experience of our recent efforts. Whenever we attempted on power or beyond power out of our concern for ecumenical unity of the Christian churches, the fruits we were worthy to receive were the product of our weakness and not of our strength. The Ecumenical Patriarchate in 1920, upon its own initiative and through an encyclical addressed to the entire world, to convene in a kind of League of Churches modelled after the League of Nations, the forerunner of the United Nations today. Through this initiative, and with the cooperation of the Protestant confessions, the World Council of Churches was founded. Here, in spite of the existing weaknesses, a certain mutual interdwelling of traditions, inter-church aid, and the building of reciprocal respect is generated on the level of a cultivation of consciences. A similar experience is derived from an equally important initiative of the Ecumenical Patriarchate to inaugurate, along with the other sister Orthodox churches, bilateral theological dialogues with the ancient Oriental churches, the Roman Catholic, the Old Catholic, the Anglican, the Lutheran, and the Reformed churches. Perhaps the older members among you remember the historical meeting of our predecessor, Patriarch Athenagoras, with Pope Paul VI, both of blessed memory, in Jerusalem in 1964. It was the first such meeting of the primates of Old and New Rome since the Great Schism of 1054. You may further recall the lifting of the anathemas between these two churches in 1965 and the exchange of visits between Pope John Paul II and our immediate predecessor, the late Ecumenical Patriarch Demetrios. We ourselves continue the effort. Recently, we extended it by attempting an interreligious rapprochement. We convened an international interreligious conference under the aegis of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, having as its theme peace and tolerance. We are fully aware that the cultivation of a peaceful climate for coexistence and creative cooperation, both among religions and churches as well as among national states, races and traditions, demands radical change. Dialogue, international conferences, communication among leaders responsible for drafting legislation, growing closer through goodwill, and abandoning the notion of irreconcilable differences are positive, useful steps, but they are not enough. The problems of the contemporary world and the problems confronting Europe in particular demand fundamental re-evaluations of our cultural choices. In other words, the presupposition for our cultural model. Two emphatic examples bear witness to this need. The first is the tragedy of unemployment, which plagues Europe today. It is obvious that neither moral counsel nor fragmented measures of socio-economic policies would suffice in confronting rising unemployment. The problem of unemployment compels us to re-examine the self-evident priorities in our society, such as the absolute priority of so-called development, which is measured only in economic terms. We are trapped in the tyrannical need to continually increase productivity and, as a consequence, to continually create newer and greater quantities of consumer goods. Placing these two necessities on an equal footing imposes the constant need for greater perfection in the means of productivity, while continually restricting the power of production, that is, the human potential. Concurrently, consumer needs of this very same human potential must constantly increase and expand. Thus, the economy becomes independent of the needs of society, functions without human intervention, and develops into industrial methods which try to equate abstract proportions. Perhaps because of the acute problem of unemployment, it is time, instead of concerning ourselves with the self-centered demands for our individual rights, to prioritize personal productivity within the realm of human relationships. Civil management of public affairs must answer this question. Who will inspire the Europeans of today to give priority to the interpersonal relationships? What will be the political mandate that will convince humankind to willingly and joyfully sacrifice their imperious need for consumption and their limitless demands for unquenchable productivity in order to rediscover the communion of life within the community of persons? Politics play a role in the radical changes in understanding human life. But in people's consciences, they are consolidated only by the persuasion of experiences as conveyed through their religious traditions. If the classic and renowned studies of Max Weber, Werner Sombart, and R.H. Tawney hold true in their findings, then at the base of contemporary European understanding of work and economics, one can find a concrete receptiveness to Christian theology. If this finding holds true, then a new concept of understanding work and economy unavoidably will pass through theological revision. The circumvention of theology by various ideologies is not convincing and cannot bring any realistic solutions. Behind the modern impasse of European life, there hides a theological position. We believe that similar conclusions can be derived from the second issue, equally critical and distressing in our times, the problem of ecology. All of us are aware of the nightmarish proportions of this problem as it increases day by day. Permit us to hold to our conviction that the ecological problem of our times demands a radical re-evaluation of our understanding of how we see the entire world. It demands another interpretation of matter and the world, another perception of the attitude of humankind towards nature, and another understanding of how we acquire and make use of our material goods. Within the measure of our spiritual capacity, the Orthodox Church and theology endeavours to contribute to the necessary dialogue concerning this problem. Thus, upon the initiative of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, we, the Orthodox, have established on September 1st of each year a day of meditation and prayer in confronting the continuing ecological destruction of our planet. Having convened an international conference in Crete, we have further inaugurated a systematic theological study on this problem. However, our efforts will be meaningless if they remain fragmented. Therefore, taking advantage of the fact that we stand here before you, we hasten to declare that we are prepared to place our modest efforts at the disposal of the European Parliament for any future study and concern to arrive at a pan-European response to the ecological problem. Permit us to declare the same readiness in reference to the aforementioned problem of unemployment plaguing Europe. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, your gracious invitation has permitted us to share this limited but valuable time to communicate personally with you. We feel the overwhelming burden of our responsibility. In our humble words, we have endeavoured to review the history and the experience of an institution which for 17 centuries has continued to function as an axis for the unity of European civilization. We aspire to continue the tradition of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of New Rome, Constantinople, and to continue to preach the Word of God, as did the Patriarchs of Constantinople, John Chrysostom, Gregory the Theologian, Photius the Great, and a myriad of giants, not only in the realm of ecclesiastical history, but also of recognized stature in European history as well. Historical conditions have drastically changed the world scene. Please accept our presence here as a simple reminder. We remind you that we exist. And we continue to minister and to bear witness to the common struggle in caring for the contribution of understanding and hope worldwide. The metropolitan sees of the Ecumenical Patriarchate in all the European countries, the hundreds of parishes of Orthodox faithful in Central and Western Europe, immigrant and local populations are our flock and the people of your political constituencies. From outside of the boundaries of the 12-nation European Union, a great number of other multi-populated nations belonging to the Orthodox ecclesiastical tradition also follow on the European journey. Permit us to express the hope that these peoples will be called soon to participate in the life and institutions of a united Europe. Through its faithful and under the developing circumstances, the Ecumenical Patriarch continues in its ecumenical diaconia to remain an essential part of the European dimension. Beyond the ideological orientation of each of you, beyond each individual's personal conviction, metaphysical or not, we kindly ask you to accept the readiness of the Ecumenical Patriarchate to support you in your efforts for European unification, for a Europe which will not exist only for itself, but for the good of all of humanity. We wish to conclude with a prayer which we Orthodox direct to the Prince of Peace, especially during the period of Great Lent. Heavenly King, strengthen our faith, reconcile the nations, and give peace to the world. We thank you warmly.